Should same-sex marriage be legal? My name is Zach Murphy, and I'll be co-moderating with James O'Day here. And our panelists on the pro-legalization of same-sex marriage side are Casey Stirk and Samantha Bartle. On the anti-legalization of same-sex marriage side are Michael Wilson and Mike Antonacci. Now, the focus of this debate is very narrow. We want to discuss only the legal and political issues behind same-sex marriage, namely the specific question of whether or not same-sex marriage should be legalized. Now, what you're going to see tonight is not a traditional debate. When organizing this event, we attempted to structure a debate which would bring out the underlying philosophical arguments and issues behind this issue of same-sex marriage. Now, with this in mind, the debate will proceed in this way. First, one side will give a 10-minute presentation of their argument. Following this, the opposing side will have 5 minutes to raise objections to this argument, after which the forwarding side will have a brief time to respond to those objections. The same structure will then be repeated with the other side forwarding its argument. And at the conclusion of this, we will take a brief break and hand out index cards for everyone to submit questions to the panelists on. These cards will then be collected and we'll have a question and answer session using these questions. Now, due to time constraints, we may not be able to get to every question, but we will attempt to do what we can. Now, keep in mind that what we are presenting here today are arguments, and we ask you to focus on the logical and philosophical merits of each position's argument. Now, with this in mind, we hope that tonight's event is productive and informative, and we will now turn to Casey Stirk to forward his argument in favor of same-sex marriage.
Thank you, everyone. Evolution. How many of us in this room actually know how it works? When the topic comes up, I no longer ask people, do you believe in evolution? The question I ask is, do you understand evolution? Why do I phrase it this way? Because this is overwhelming scientific literature that is no longer up for debate. It's over. You either know it or you don't. We have decoded the genomes of all life on this planet. We have uncovered the mysteries of Pangea, the origin of species, and the tree of life connecting all species, plants, and animals on this planet. We have 98% of the exact DNA of our distant cousins. We are mammals. If you study the animal kingdom, you find striking similarities between all of us living on this earth. It is absolutely beautiful and elegant how profound nature truly is. We are but a mere component and part that plays into this amazing machine we call nature. But today, we face those who choose to disregard science. Those who choose to disregard this beauty, those who make decisions based off of selfish, uninformed bias that inflicts pain and suffering on innocent people. I'm talking about the oppression of homosexuality. Homosexuality occurs throughout the animal kingdom in some 1,500 species. It has an abundant record of existence that dates back across ancient cultures throughout the world. It is a natural occurrence that is undeniable. However, it is still one of the most contested and discriminated issues plaguing society today. How sad is this? How sad is it that in today's state of affairs with poverty, education, crime, and war hindering the true possibilities of human progress, we must waste our time in public discourse arguing about something like homosexuality, debating whether or not they deserve the same rights as those of us born heterosexual. What are the arguments we have to face to overcome this persecution once and for all? Is it the tradition argument? Yes, opposite-sex marriage is our history, our fundamental background, our religious convictions. But we must look back before we can look forward. Let us discuss other issues that were our traditions and history. Slavery, the the segregation of blacks in public access to water fountains, restaurants, and transportation. Anti-Semitism, the discrimination of the rights of women to vote. Roughly half of the human race there. Do we still publicly allow these traditions to be carried on? Of course not. We have moved away from these barbaric practices because we have learned to care for one another and not judge one another based on skin color, gender, ethnicity, or age. The advocators and supporters of this mindset have lost all the battles previously stated, just like they will lose this one. It is the people who constantly push society forward that are the catalysts who have created the advanced moral world you see today. How is it in the 21st century, in 2012, we are still fighting for this obvious equal right? Is it to protect the sanctity of marriage? I would ask where the sanctity is. Is it in the 50% divorce rate? The millions of children born out of wedlock? We live in a society where we cannot control the actions of others, and the sanctity of marriage is not even close to an argument. Some argue that marriage depends on it. Some argue that marriage depends, or at least was formed, on procreation. Can we say that marriage was founded on the family? Yes, it was founded on family values. However, we do not exclude those who are infertile or unable to reproduce from the act of marriage. We do not have laws stating that couples must bear children to consummate their marriage. Why not? Why don't we take interest in people's personal affairs? Because it is unconstitutional. Will gay marriage make other children become gay? Of course not. If so, does heterosexual marriage make every child straight? I think we all know the answer to that. Can we succeed in raising our next generation of thinkers, educators, and innovators if they are not raised in a home with one mother and one father? If we cannot, why do we allow single-parent homes, divorce itself, and surrogate mothers? There are millions of people raised in homes that were not the traditional definition of mother and father parents that have become successful, caring, productive, and loving people. What about the argument that civil unions provide an acknowledgement and ritual for the homosexual community to celebrate? Well, this doesn't quite work either. Let's not forget that this prohibits tax exemption for spouses, access to health insurance policies, inheritance rights, hospital visitations, and the list goes on. But you know what is omitted from this list? Something that surpasses money or security or health care. It's being accepted by the society that you live in. It's being considered to be equal and deserving access that others around you are being privileged with. We have a true adoption problem in the United States today. Over 400,000 children are in foster care. 400,000. Try to wrap your mind around how many innocent children this is that are in a judicial, political, and disorganized mess that have never known the true sense of a home. 48% of adoptions occur through non-relative contracts. Yet gay couples are being denied access daily to this right, either through red tape provisions and roadblocks or outright discrimination. The interest of children and their well-being is being put on the back burner. Many of the secular advanced countries around the world have considered its residual influence and have ultimately passed same-sex marriage. Countries including Sweden, Canada, Norway, Portugal, and Spain. Today, 8 states in our union have passed this equal rights movement. I sincerely hope that one day we can expand the knowledge of equality to include this diverse, educated, philanthropic, caring community of individuals that want to live in a world where they can love who they love and be recognized for who they are and not what they do. This summer, July 20th, I will be getting married to an amazing woman here in the audience tonight. I am so excited to share that moment. Words cannot do it justice. To think that there are people out there who love as I do, who wish to be recognized by their fellow citizens, but will be denied this right, is appalling. And I truly look forward to the day when it is nothing but a page in our history books. Thank you.
We'll now have 5 minutes of Mike Antonacci to provide objections to this argument forwarded by Casey.
Right, so the basic issue that seemed to be outlined in the opening statement was that by recognizing these marriages, it will lead to acceptance in society. However, that assumption was not justified, and the topic of discussion is, should it be legal? And so what we need is some sort of governmental reason for why it should be legal. One phrase that really stood out to me was, love who they love. This implies that the primary purpose of marriage is to recognize romantic love between two people. So we would have to ask, does the government have a reason to do this? Because the majority of the legal benefits of marriage can be obtained in other ways than marriage. For example, the hospital visitation rights, making medical decisions for your spouse. These can be put in a living will. Inheritance can be put in a will. The ones that cannot be obtained in this way, as Casey pointed out, are financial ones. Taxation is one example. Another one is the ability to collect on social programs such as Medicare or Social Security for your spouse. And so the government is investing money in recognizing marriage, and we have to ask, what is their reason for doing that? So I would like to hear a reason or a case from this side for why this promotes some sort of governmental purpose. So from the rights issue, the only, I guess, privileges being denied are monetary rather than anything else. So the rights argument is not as strong as it would appear. On evolution, bringing up that homosexuality is seen in nature, this is true. However, we must make sure that these animals correspond most closely to humans. For example, there is a very high percentage of homosexuality in birds. However, they lay eggs and only one parent is in charge of taking care of the eggs, and it is the other partner that will then engage in homosexual acts. The mammals that are most similar to us have two hormones, oxytocin and vasopressin. In these mammals, it causes monogamy. They mate for life. And even within those mammals, yes, we do see homosexual activity, yet no permanent homosexual unions. And so the argument from nature that supports this is not as strong as it might appear. On the arguments from tradition, it seemed to be more of a guilt by association rather than anything else. There are two errors that can be made on tradition. One error is to say, because it's done this way, it is right. The other is to say, because it was done this way, it is wrong. Instead, we must look at why was it done that way, and do those assumptions still hold weight? The same thing was seen in this in the modern day. Countries and states are moving to legalize it. This implies that this is the correct thing to do, but that assumption must also be justified. So we have to ask this, because they love each other view of marriage, what is the government's stake in that? And it appears that there is really no reason for the government to invest in something like that. It doesn't really have a payout. Now, if someone wants that to be their personal definition of marriage, that it's, I love this person, and we're going to express it that way, that's fine. However, public policy is not based on personal opinion. And so I would like to hear an answer to those objections. Thank you.
Casey, we would we'll hear your responses to the objections raised by Mike. We'll allot about 3 minutes.
I don't know how long it's going to take. We weren't able to field all the questions or comments that were addressed. There's a lot to talk about when you start to discuss the benefit to the state. What benefit does the state have? And I'm interested to hear them talk more about this. What is the benefit to the state? One of the questions has got to do with oxytocin, and that causes monogamy. So I'm not sure where this leads if oxytocin causes monogamy, because there are lots of animals that have monogamy that may not have oxytocin. I'm not sure if this is a perfect correlation. I really don't know where this leads us with. Oxytocin therefore means that this is something that separates us or that makes us that much different. The panel also addressed the interest in romanticism, or that the state should be play roles in romantic love. And as far as I see, recognizing heterosexual marriage is recognizing romantic love. I'm not really sure what this argument is saying. The issue, the historical issue, I believe, has to do with why do they recognize marriage? Why is marriage founded? Why is it even here? Why do we have it? I would assume that one of the most simple answers is money. It's to raise money. It also has a lot of religious background to it for a lot of reasons, but money would be the #1 reason. So allowing gay marriage would be a benefit to the state. I'm not sure what the argument is. I would like to point out there was a true statement, there's a statement that I did like, which is just because we're moving towards a place where more countries are legalizing it doesn't make it true, which is a good point to make. Just because something is happening, just because there is a movement taking place, doesn't mean that it's necessarily moral. But the only rebuttal I can have for that is, if you look at the history, you look at slavery, you look at women's rights to vote, interracial marriage, any of those things that have now passed and that have received the same arguments, do you think the world is a better place because we fixed those problems? I would say yes. That's all we have.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll now turn to hearing the forwarding of the argument against same-sex marriage by Mike Wilson. Mike, are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, I come before you today to explain why we should not legalize same-sex marriage. The first thing that we need to do in having this discussion is examine what those words mean. We're not having a debate about whether or not homosexual relationships are as intrinsically valid as heterosexual relationships. We are not having a discussion about whether or not the role of the state and the purpose of marriage is to validate love. No, ladies and gentlemen. The discussion we are having today is about whether or not same-sex marriage should be legal. We are not examining the philosophical reasons behind marriage. We are not examining the religious context of marriage. We are examining the question of what is the state's compelling reason to endorse same-sex marriages. We're going to discuss this through 3 means. Firstly, we're going to take a look at the equal rights arguments and show how they do not apply to the area of marriage, as marriage is not a right, but a privilege licensed by the state. Secondly, we are going to look at what the state's compelling interest in marriage is, why the state even gives a hoot. And then thirdly, we are going to look at some of the lack of clarity that we have heard from the pro-same-sex marriage side, including what are the actual implications of the remarks made by my honorable colleague. Firstly, equal rights, and why same-sex marriage is simply the continuation of a great, glorious global trend towards greater human freedom and greater liberty. We absolutely applaud the advancement of human society. We applaud the advancement of human morality. We do not applaud the attempts made by the gentleman to smear our side of the argument by equating us with slavers, by equating us with those who deny women the right to vote. We do not appreciate being compared to the very, very angry bird that gets jealous and hates the homosexual birds. Because that's not who we are, and that's not what we're going to do for you today. Now, why do I say that marriage is not a right? because the state has to license you to get married. If you want to go out and find any kind of preacher in any kind of church to say that you are married, you have an undeniable right to do so, and we applaud you for that. However, what we're talking about today is the ability of any two individuals to go down to the county clerk's office and acquire a marriage license. This means that they are meeting some kind of standard set forward by the state to endorse their union. This does not mean that their relationship is the only valid kind of relationship. It simply means that for them to participate in this right, they have to bring a compelling state interest to the table. Now, the reason that we say that marriage is not a right but a privilege is simply because it is licensed. We are not talking about your freedom of speech. We are not talking about your right to engage in sexual relations with any other consenting adult of your choice. We are talking specifically about why you need this one piece of state paper, what that does for you, and what you, in turn, do for the society. So, any argumentation that we are simply standing in the way of the great tide of history is misapplied because it does not bring to bear any argumentation or any evidence of why it is in the state's interest to support same-sex marriage. This brings us to our second point of what is the state's interest in marriage. Principally, we are talking about the situation in the United States of America, both because that's where we live and because that's where most of our knowledge resides. Marriage, and this may shock some of you, predates the state. Marriage predates our governmental structures. So, it started off as a religious institution. At some point in the late 19th century, it was decided that the state had a compelling interest in participating in this ancient ritual. So that is what we have to examine today. What your church does or does not do is between you, the leaders of that church, and your God or gods. But why does the state have an interest in marriage? The reason for this is simple: children. Marriage is essentially a procreative union. It is between a man and a woman because they have the unique ability to bring forward children into the world. And both our own reason and empirical evidence shows that those children that are raised in a home with a mother and a father, or even in case of divorce and remarriage, a stepfather and a mother, a father and a stepmother. Maybe after there's been some kind of custody dispute, a secondary stepmother and a secondary stepfather. Regardless, that is the state's interest because those children who are raised with two parents have a better chance in life. They come from better socioeconomic circumstances. They tend to produce better socioeconomic outcomes. Now, we're talking about same-sex marriage, not children. So why am I talking about children? Because that is the state's interest in marriage. You'll note, the state does not regulate, does not require licensing for other kinds of free association. The four of us here, we're going to go out and we're going to form a bowling team. And that is not going to require us to have a state license. Or, later on, after the bowling's done, I'm going to go to my girlfriend's house, and the two of us do not require a state license to do whatever we choose to do. The state does not say that it has the exclusive power to regulate every sphere of human activity, but it has, as a well-established legal principle, the right to affect these particular unions. Why? Again, because these have been determined to be the best means, the best environment in which to raise children for the betterment of society. Now, you can say, but that's old-fashioned thinking. We're just talking about two individuals, any two individuals that want to get together. So this should be totally fine. Except I ask you, why don't we allow first cousins to marry? Why do we not permit brothers and sisters to marry? Everyone in this audience is almost certainly experiencing a degree of an ick factor in imagining a marriage between a brother and a sister. But that is the wrong kind of mentality. That is a mentality rooted in your own prejudices. There is no reason beyond moral judgment to say that two people who are siblings should not be married, except that science and our own experience tell us that any children produced by such a union will be inherently disadvantaged. They will not be for the betterment of society. Therefore, we see that the state's interest in marriage lies principally in this ability of procreation. This is also why we see that when divorces happen, the state has the final word in deciding the disposition of the children. The topic before us, ladies and gentlemen, is not a squishy argument about right and wrong and acceptance. It is about legalization of a new and different practice. I'm very much looking forward to hearing the remarks of the gentlelady of why it is in the state's interest, what is the alternate conception of the state's interest in marriage to encourage these unions. But in the meantime, all I can address is the gentleman's point, that what we're talking about here is love and the validation of love, which means that every one of you here who has ever been in a relationship and has not been married, everything you felt was nonsense. Everything you felt was illusory because you didn't have any kind of state validation of your relationship. That is the gentleman's argument. We say there's a very clear reason why we have permitted, to this point, only different-sex, heterosexual marriage. And that is because marriage as a state-recognized institution exists for the single purpose. And we have heard no alternative reason for why we should believe that marriage has a purpose other than this. And for that reason, we are very proud to stand in opposition.
I would like to first point out one thing that Mike said that I found extremely offensive, and I'm sure most people in this room do. The fact that you have to have a man and a woman, whether mother, stepfather, second stepfather, second stepmother, whatever, that you have to have them in order to create wonderful children. That's a complete and utter lie. Most families in the United States are divorced, and there are a lot of single parents out in this world. My mother raised me, my brother, and sister all since before I was even born, really, by herself. She divorced my father, when she was still pregnant. And she has raised two children, that are going to college, one that is in the workforce right now. My sister is going to be a chemical engineer. Everyone knows how high paying of a job that is. If that's a disadvantage, I'm sorry. But, and I'm going to become, I'm going to be a theater major in technical theater. I really, really strongly disagree with the whole fact of there needs to be a man and a woman, one way, shape, or form, to create children that are going to be better off in this world. I really strongly disagree with that because I am living proof that that is not true. He mentioned 3 points: equal rights, and also why the state should care, and the lack of clarity from my side. With equal rights, pretty much all he mentioned was that we're not supposed to compare anything to the past. He's very strongly against the fact that we compared that side's argument to the past. But if we learned from the past and we didn't have to keep repeating ourselves about the past, then we wouldn't be in this situation. If we learned to just accept things as they come at us, then we wouldn't have to be dealing with this. We did that with slavery, we did that with women's rights, we did that with interracial couples. And we're still learning to accept things little by little through history, and that should not even be happening right now. There is so much that has happened in history that if we look back, there's always someone that is too afraid to take that first step, and eventually you have to take that first step into becoming a more perfect union for our country. this country was founded on so many different reasons and so many differences, and to have something so silly as legalizing same-sex marriage to be in our way today is ridiculous. It should not be happening. We are such an advanced culture. The United States is a world leader in many different things. A lot of people, a lot of different countries look up to the United States, and I think that we should have more than just 8 states ready to make that leap. They also mentioned why the states should care. Currently, out of the reason why they actually care is because they get money from legalizing marriage. So to legalize same-sex marriage would actually be putting more money in their pocket. So I really don't understand why it should matter to the states that we add same-sex marriage to the list of marriages with, heterosexual couples. It just makes no sense. They're gonna get more money. It's gonna be more of a profit to the state. It's a win-win situation. People become happy, the state gets more money, everyone's okay. Also, the state apparently must license it, but it's not really, and like the church was the original one to start marriage, and I get that. So the state just kind of jumped in on it, and you can still go to whoever, like whatever church you go to, or what, and become, I guess, married without technically being legally married. That's not the point of this, though. We don't want the benefits of a church. We're asking for the benefits of the law and for the government to be behind us and our freedom to be, for our freedom for same-sex couples to be married. He also brought up incest for marriage. And this topic is about same-sex marriage. It's not about incest. And I know their fear is, well, what if we open up the door for same-sex marriage? Next thing you know, they're going to be asking for incest. They're going to ask to marry their dogs. That's not the case in which we're talking about right now. Incest is a completely different topic than same-sex marriage. And for them to bring that up, it's not on topic in any way, shape, or form. But I figured that they would be talking about this because they're scared and they're trying to scare people away from accepting same-sex marriage. Fear is the only thing stopping people, and it shouldn't be that way. Fear is the only thing ever stopping anyone from doing anything. But we also found out, though, that California, Texas, Florida, and New York all allow you to marry your cousins. Isn't that funny? 4 of the most populous states in this country allow you to marry your cousins, and he's very scared of incest. Well, that's been legal for how long? We can't manage to have more than a few states in the U.S. have same-sex marriage legal. I don't really understand. Time's up. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Again, we'll take a couple minutes. Allow Mike a few minutes to prepare to respond to these objections. You good?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. We'll look forward to about 3 minutes to respond to those objections.
Sure. So the first argument we hear is a retreading of the historical inevitability argument. The problem with this argument is the same problem that has always existed with it. Anything that you want to permit should be fine, because anything new is going against the tide of historical inevitability. There is no engagement with any of our argumentation about why the state has any interest in regulating personal unions at all, and why the state has an interest in regulating in permitting certain kinds of unions and not others. All we get, again, is this vague, well, we're making social progress argument. If that's the case, any behavior that I want to engage in that becomes new becomes unobjectionable because I then say, well, this hasn't happened before, it's inevitable. We're moving forward as a society and we're proud to do that. It's not an argument, ladies and gentlemen. Next. Apparently, the primary reason why the state should favor this is not any of the highfalutin human rights argumentation that we received so eloquently from Casey. Instead, it's a money grab. If that's the case, why does the state need to validate your love? Wouldn't it be in the state's interest to declare that Mike and I are married so that it can then tax us at an additional rate? That any two people, you guys, you are now assigned to be in a marriage so that we can tax you more. That is not anything that they have argued for at all, requiring universal marriage in order to raise tax revenues. And if they want to claim exclusive fiscal benefits, what about the cost that will be imposed upon the courts when, because half of marriages end in divorce, inevitably homosexual marriages end in divorce? Acrimonious proceedings that get dragged through the courts. Apparently, that won't cost a dime. If there was any coherency to their fiscal argumentation, I sincerely wish that we'd be able to hear it. Now, lastly, there's a great focus on incest. Now, why was this introduced into the debate? Well, we're not talking about incest. We're only talking about same-sex marriage. No, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about why we legalize same-sex, why we should or should not legalize same-sex marriage. And that is why I brought you 10 minutes of argumentation about what the state's compelling interest in permitting some marriages and not permitting others is. The only response we get is, well, but, you know, in some states you can, and in others you maybe should be able to, and, well, it's a shame that same-sex marriage is only legal in 8 states. Not a single moment on why it is in the state's interest to endorse these unions. Not a single moment on why same-sex marriage should be legalized. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we invite your questions.